Today we're going to be reading chapter 4. This is called Frankenfood. Since ancient times, people have found ways to make food tastier and keep it edible for longer. In the days before fridges, fermenting, sun-drying, smoking, and preserving with salt were popular techniques. Middle Easterners and Asians sun-dried fruits and vegetables 14,000 years ago, while Plains indigenous tribes in North America hung meat at the top of their teepees above the fire to smoke it. None of these people had heard of a molecule or a microorganism, but they were already using the power of chemistry in amazing ways. Over the last century, we've gotten very good at using science to transform our food, whether it's to make it easier to transport, safer, longer lasting, tastier, better looking, or more uniform. Today, a lot of our food is created in conditions that resemble a lab more than a kitchen. What does that mean for the way we eat? Space age food. Modern food processing owes a lot to the space race. In the years after World War II, the US and former Soviet Union were desperate to outdo each other in the mastery of outer space, and each invested billions in technology that might give them the edge. Astronauts needed food that could stay edible for a long time, and that need led to the development of freeze drying, concentrated juices, and artificial sweeteners, colors, and preservatives. Want a glimpse of the can opener cooking that became popular back in the day? Dig up a cookbook from the 50s or 60s or search the web for vintage recipes and check out the ingredients. You'll find lots of jello, prepared sauces, canned soups, fish, and meat. The first meal in space was eaten by Russian astronaut Yuri Gagarin in 1961. It consisted of three toothpaste-like tubes, two containing pureed meat and one containing chocolate sauce. Yuck. A few years later, American space meals had gotten a bit more gourmet, with astronauts on the Gemini space missions eating freeze-dried, reconstituted shrimp, cocktail, chicken, vegetables, and butterscotch pudding. Back on Earth, these innovations led to a boom in convenience foods. The second half of the 20th century brought frozen TV dinners, a wide variety of canned, ready to eat foods, and packaged food mixes for things like rice, drinks, and cake, all of which appealed to women who had less time to spend on food preparation now that they were working outside of the home in great numbers. These products didn't require complicated cooking knowledge and promised predictable results. No worrying about whether your cake would rise properly or your soup was too thin. Before long, processed, neatly packaged food became a status symbol. It showed that you could afford to spend money. Backyard vegetable gardens and raising chickens, now popular hobbies for foodies, were at the time associated with poor people and immigrants who grew their own food because they had no other options. Pre-made foods have many advantages. Fresh foods like meat and produce spoil quickly and need to be refrigerated and are more likely to carry microorganisms that can cause illness. Canning, dehydrating, or heat processing food kills bacteria and microorganisms, and preserved food can be transported long distances and kept unrefrigerated. These techniques also make seasonal fruits and vegetables like peaches or tomatoes available all year. But the processing of foods also tends to reduce naturally occurring nutrients. Canned fruit, for example, is lower in vitamin C than fresh fruit. Processed foods can also be higher in salt and sugar and often contain other additives. Thanks for the MREs. The space race is off, but the boundaries of food science are still being pushed by the military. Meals for troops on duty have a tall order. They need to be lightweight, nutritious, durable enough to be dropped from helicopters, and must stay edible for months or years, even in extreme temperatures. So the U.S. Army employs food technologists to come up with food and packaging innovations. Some familiar items were developed this way. M&M's candies were designed especially for U.S. troops in World War II. Their hard candy shell kept the chocolate inside from melting in warm temperatures. In the 1990s, they had to be re-engineered to survive the extreme heat of the first Gulf War in Iraq, which was accomplished by reversing the protein and fat in the chocolate molecule. As for meals, they've come a long way since the days of the American Civil War, when soldiers on long campaigns survived on salted pork and hardtack, a type of cracker sometimes nicknamed molar breakers. Today, soldiers eat MREs, meals ready to eat, dehydrated meals stored in pouches. There are over 20 types, including things like lemon pepper tuna and pesto pasta, with options for vegetarians and religious and cultural preferences. They even come with a flameless heater, a little package of magnesium, salt, and iron that releases heat when water is added, with added ingredients. Additives are substances added to processed foods to enhance or preserve their flavor, texture, or appearance. They're part of the reason these foods can be stored for a long time without going rotten. There are around 20 different categories of additives, including natural substances like vitamin C, salt, and vinegar, and others like thickeners, preservatives, and emulsifiers, which prevent mixtures like mayonnaise or ice cream from separating. To see an example of how additives are used, consider bread. To make bread, you basically need three things: flour, yeast to make it rise, and water. If you want to get fancy, you could add some other grains for texture and variety, or maybe a little salt for flavor. But look at the ingredients list on a package of supermarket bread. Chances are it's a lot longer than 3 or 4 items, and there might be a few you can't pronounce. Some common ones are azotocarbamide, azotocarbonamide, oops, did not say that right, a chemical used to improve the texture of bread and also to give yoga mats their elasticity. Oops, sorry about that. L-cysteine, which makes bread softer, potassium bromate, which lessens baking time, monoglycerides and diglycerides, which give a smoother texture and make bread last longer on the shelf, and calcium propionate, which prevents mold growth. Countless school science projects have proven the results. A slice of additive-laden bread can stay picture-perfect and mold-free for months, while a home-baked loaf turns green and fuzzy or dries out in under a week. The safety of food additives have been debated for years. For instance, boric acid was a common preservative in the 1800s and early 1900s until people realized it was toxic. And the food dye number red 2 was banned in the US in the 70s after it was found to cause cancer in rats at high doses. Both the Food and Drug Administration in the US and Health Canada ban additives that cause cancer in humans or animals, but sometimes the data isn't clear right away. And some additives are legal even though they've been linked to health risks. Sodium nitrate, for instance, which is added to processed meats like salami and sausages to give them their reddish pink color, has been shown to increase the risk of cancer and heart disease in humans. Food dyes are one area of controversy. Synthetic or artificial dyes are usually more effective and cheaper than colors made from natural sources, but there is disagreement about which are safe to use. Some have been linked to allergic reactions, and one study found that a synthetic yellow flavor called tartrazine made children hyperactive. Norway and Sweden ban food dyes completely. The United Kingdom and the US and Canada all permit different ones. As for preservatives, you could argue that whatever risks come from consuming a small amount are outweighed by the benefits of food lasting longer and fewer people becoming sick from eating spoiled food. Oops, silly thing. However, there are many canned, dried, and packaged foods that don't contain preservatives, so it's possible to avoid them if you read labels carefully. Milk is white, so why is most cheddar cheese orange? Back in the old days, cows fed on pasture produced yellowish milk in the spring and summer because of beta-carotene, a vitamin in fresh grass. In the winter, the cows were fed on hay, and their milk was paler. The yellower cheese produced from spring milk was seen as better. So in the 1800s, dairy farmers started adding color to their cheese, first in the form of annatto seeds and later as synthetic color to make it more appealing to buyers. Competing cheddar makers kept trying to outdye each other until the cheese ended up the familiar pumpkin hue we know today. Pasteurization. One important way of preserving food was developed in 1864 by the French chemist Louis Pasteur. Pasteurization involves heating liquids like milk or juice for a short time, then cooling them. The heat kills most microorganisms and helps prevent the growth of harmful bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli, which would normally thrive in the liquid, and which can cause severe food poisoning. Before pasteurization, every year, thousands of children and adults become sick or died from drinking raw milk. Some people claim that raw, unprocessed milk has more health benefits, as the pasteurization process destroys some of milk's vitamins, minerals, and helpful bacteria. but unpasteurized milk is considered among the most risky foods for contracting foodborne illnesses, and its sale is banned in Canada and many states in the US. Flavor wizards. Ever wonder about those natural and artificial flavors you see on ingredients lists for yogurt, fruit drinks, candy, and snacks? They're the creation of flavorists, food scientists who work in laboratories creating the chemical compounds that trick our taste buds into thinking we're tasting strawberry when we're chewing a piece of gum or guacamole on tortilla chips. Flavorings are often used to make food with lower fat, sugar, or salt content more appealing to consumers, and they're a huge part of the snack industry, which is constantly pushing to come up with new and unique flavors. Food flavoring labs sell specific flavors, the formulas for which they are kept highly secret, for huge sums to food manufacturers like Coca-Cola, Gatorade, and General Mills. Flavorists are also working on experimental new foods, like gum that would change flavor 3 times when it's chewed. Fat, sugar, salt. Almost all processed food in our supermarkets contains certain amounts of fat, usually some type of vegetable oil, sweetener, sugar, or other sweetener, and salt. In the right proportions, those 3 ingredients have the power to make food almost irresistible. Why? Turns out we're designed to seek out fat and sugar, which are high in calories, and which we wouldn't have found that often back in our plant foraging days. When we taste these foods, all the programming of our evolution tells us eat more. Today, however, sugar and fat aren't exactly in short supply, so our hardwired attraction to them backfires. Our bodies tell us to eat more, but eating too much can make us sick. Manufacturers of everything from fast food hamburgers to breakfast cereal and chips have spent huge amounts of money researching the exact amounts and proportions of these ingredients that will hit our taste buds and brain in just the right way. In the food industry, they call this the bliss point and make us want to eat more. So next time you open a bag of chips and can't stop at one, you know why. When companies offer healthier products with less of one of these ingredients, they'll often increase the proportion of another to make up for it in the taste department. For instance, low-fat yogurt often has more sugar, and low-salt products can still have a lot of fat and sugar. Food company executives can't win in a way. They're criticized for hooking people on junk food, but they know nobody will buy those foods if they don't taste good. And their iconic snacks, drinks, and cereals simply wouldn't taste the same without good doses of unhealthy ingredients. The good news is that a few companies like Kraft have had some success in modifying their recipes to cut back on sugar, fat, and salt. Meanwhile, scientists at big companies like Nestle and Cargill are trying to find ever more ways to make their products irresistible. Their experiments include engineering fat globules to improve how food feels in the mouth and tinkering with salt and sugar molecules so they deliver a faster hit to the taste buds. Frito-Lay has even hired a neuromarketing firm, which uses brain scanning technology to analyze how people react to their snack foods and pinpoint how things like color and texture light up the pleasure centers of our brains. Some snack and drink companies like to get their customers involved in the quest for new taste sensations. Every year, Lay's lets budding flavor wizards submit ideas for new potato chip flavors. And people vote online for their favorites. The winner gets $50,000 and their chip flavor manufactured by Lay's. The flavor finalists for 2014 included bacon poutine and cinnamon bun. And the next page, we're on an info bite. So this is processed versus fresh. The percent of Americans' supermarket dollars spent on processed food, so 90%. It's pretty high. Americans' food consumption by calories. So we've got 62% processed food. We've got 25.5% meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. And then 12.5% fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. The next part of this infographic is about additives. This is the approximate number of food additives approved for use. So in the US, there's 3,000. In Canada, 850, and European Union is 350. So we allow a lot more than other countries. Genetically modified foods. Most commonly, genetically modified foods are corn, soy, zucchini, alfalfa, canola, sugar beets, and milk. Artificially sweet. In 1952, the Kirsch Bottling Company in Brooklyn, New York, launched a product the likes of which no one had ever seen, a sugar-free ginger ale named No Cow. Other companies quickly got in on the act, and soon soda drinkers could guzzle Diet Right, Diet Dr. Pepper, Tab, Fresca, and others, all without worrying about that extra sugar or what it was doing to their waistlines. Since then, food companies have spent countless dollars on developing products that promise to let us eat the kinds of food we tend to crave, like sugary or fatty treats, without the side effects of calories. Artificial sweeteners like sucralose and aspartame are at least as sweet as sugar, but contain virtually no calories. The molecules pass through the body without being digested and aren't harmful to teeth. They're commonly found in diet soft drinks and gum, and in convenient one-serving packages we can stir into coffee or tea. While there are lots of unproven health warnings and rumors about the dangers of unnatural sweeteners, aspartame and sucralose have been repeatedly tested and are generally considered safe in the quantities people normally eat them. Whether they actually keep people from gaining weight, however, is up for debate. Some scientists believe artificial sweeteners mess with our metabolisms because their sweet taste triggers the promise of calories they never deliver. But more research is needed to figure out how this happens. Fake fats. In the 1990s, there was a craze for low fat food, and food manufacturers responded by filling grocery shelves with low-fat products. They also developed a product called Olestra, a fat that can't be metabolized. It passes straight through their body without delivering calories. Olestra started turning up in high-fat foods like chips and crackers with the promise that snack lovers could finally eat as much of these foods as they wanted without guilt. Unfortunately, the side effects of consuming Olestra included abdominal cramping and diarrhea, which understandably made the ingredient a bit unpopular. But you can still find Olestra, sometimes under the brand name Olean, in a few potato chips and snack products on grocery shelves. Just make sure you're near a bathroom if you decide to give it a try. A future without food. In the Jetsons, a 1960s animated TV series about a family living in a high-tech future, science has finally solved the inconvenient problem of having to eat regularly to survive. The cartoon characters simply pop a pill containing all their nutrient needs. No cooking, no mess. More ominously, in the old sci-fi film Soylent Green, people in a futuristic society survive on green wafers, produced produced by a scary controlling corporation. Spoiler alert. It turns out the wafers are made from people. Excuse me. Back in the real world, it's not so easy to fit our complex nutritional needs into a capsule. You'd have to swallow at least half a pound of pills a day to get enough calories to survive, which seems a lot more inconvenient than simply eating a sandwich. But the idea of food replacements has been around for a while. The powdered vitamin-enhanced orange drink Tang, for instance, was developed in the 50s to provide astronauts with nutrients in space. Today, meal replacement drinks and bars are common among dieters, athletes, and people rushing out the door with no time for breakfast. Recently, a California entrepreneur raised over $1 million to produce a nutrient-packed shake that he claims can almost entirely replace solid food. In a nod to the old sci-fi film, the drink is called Soylent, though the nutrition label says it contains no people. The advertised advantages of replacing oops, the advertised advantages of replacing most of your food with Soylent. It's cheaper than groceries, convenient and environmentally friendly, and can also help you lose weight. It's also been promoted as a way to help people around the world dealing with food shortages or famines. Many nutritionists, however, say that the way real food nourishes our bodies is much too complex to be replicated by a nutrient cocktail. And while a vitamin shake might fill up your stomach, you probably won't be tossing out the pizza menus and hosting Friday night Soylent parties anytime soon. Altered genes. The most dramatic changes we've made to our food have been introduced in the last 2 decades. People have been modifying crops for a long time, from the earliest farming of certain grains to the development of hybrid fruits and vegetables. Genetic modification of food is different, however. It modifies plants and animals by changing the structure of their DNA, the basic building blocks for every living thing. Genetic modification can make produce easier to transport, improve nutrition and yield, and make crops more resistant to viruses, pests, and herbicides. Currently, soy, corn, and canola, a grain grown for the oil in its seeds, have been genetically modified more than any other foods. A number of fruits and vegetables have also been modified, including tomatoes, zucchini, and papaya, which was altered to resist a virus that threatened to wipe out Hawaii's papaya industry. Strong opinions and fears about genetically modified GM foods are widespread. Between the corporate hype of GM producers and the alarming claims made by GM opponents, it can be difficult to figure out what's true. Some environmental organizations and consumer groups worry that the long term risks of genetically modified foods aren't known. To label or not. In North America, foods containing GM ingredients don't have to be labeled as it does in Europe. Food producers claim that consumers might be alarmed by a GM label, which could wrongly suggest there is something unsafe about the products. Consumer groups, however, say that shoppers have a right to know what's in their food and should be able to decide for themselves whether they want to eat the foods with GM ingredients. A New York Times poll in 2013 showed that 93% of Americans wanted GM products to be labeled. They also expressed concern about giant multinational corporations owning the rights to GM seeds and controlling the food supply. Most scientists agree that GM food isn't any less safe to eat than conventional food, and that GM technology is essential for increasing crop production to meet the demands of a growing population, especially in the developing world. They say GM crops will benefit society by permitting less use of pesticides and water and improving food security. GM opponents, however, say that there's no proof genetic modifications will actually achieve these things. Some also argue that GM foods are part of the big food approach to farming that promotes fewer varieties of crops and less biodiversity. A more sustainable food system, they say, would work with the environment rather than attempting to control it. Hybrid varieties of fruits or vegetables are made by cross pollinating one plant to another. A few you might have come across at the grocery store. Pluots, a plum apricot cross, tangellas, a hybrid of tangerine and pomelo grapefruit, and broccoflower, broccoli crossed with cauliflower. Beef from a lab. Could your burger one day come from a lab instead of a live animal? Scientists are working on it, but the result probably won't show up in supermarkets for at least a decade or two. Lab grown meat is produced by taking cells from animal muscle, then dosing them with a mixture of blood and antibiotics to make the cells replicate and grow. Doesn't sound too appetizing, but the benefits are promising. Cultured meat may one day produce the same amount as farmed meat, using a fraction of the land, water, and energy. Taste tests have gotten a thumbs down so far, but with support from the co-founder of Google, animal rights organizations, and even NASA, investors think it's only a matter of time before the dream of a petri dish steak became a reality. In the meantime, there are many meat substitutes made from plant ingredients, like grain, soy, and pea protein. They can be found in most grocery stores, and as of 2013, more than a third of people in the US reported eating them, either as a substitute for or alongside real meat. Food for thought. Science can do amazing things. Breakthrough in knowledge and technology have made the food we eat much more convenient, sanitary, and tasty. Think of all the foods you eat in a day that are the product of technology: cereal in a box, pasteurized milk or juice, chips, ketchup, boxed pasta, frozen pizza, ice cream. Imagine the time and effort it would take if you had to make all those things from scratch. The ultra convenience certainly makes our lives easy, but here are some things to keep in mind as you look for a healthy balance. A good way to eat fewer additives and less salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats is to eat less processed food overall. For snacks, trade chips or cold uh, cookies from a package for a piece of fruit, vegetables, or plain nuts. Try to get in the habit of reading labels and look up ingredients you don't recognize. Not all hard to pronounce ingredients are unnatural or harmful, but it's good to know what you're eating and why it's in your food. You can try your own experiment to show the effects of additives like tetrazine, page 112. You'll need 3 friends and a watch or a timer. Have your friends measure their pulse or wrist or at rest or neck. How many times does their heart beat in 1 minute? Write it down. Have one friend drink a cup of orange pop, one eat some Doritos, and one eat a cookie or a piece of fruit. Wait 10 minutes and have them take their pulses again. Did any of the foods have more of an effect than the others? That's the end of chapter 4. Thank you for listening, and I apologize for my coughing. Thanks again. Bye.